Okay, hi guys. I am so excited
Hello.
about this. I am so excited about this episode. It is our first episode with two women. It's our first INTS threesome. This is so fabulous. Today's guests are two women on a mission to help more women step into leadership at the highest levels, including one area many talented women overlook entirely: the boardroom. Annette Pearson and Samantha Carroll are the co-founders of Light the Way, a leadership development company helping leaders build the skills, confidence, clarity, and connections needed to thrive in their careers and organizations. And what I'm really excited to dig into specifically, they've also created a Board of AdvisHERs. It's very clever. Yes, it's spelled just as how it sounds. A program designed to help women understand board service, build meaningful relationships with current board members, and pursue board opportunities with intention. What's especially interesting about this partnership, though, is how complementary their backgrounds are. Annette brings years of leadership experience from organizations like Google and Cisco, along with executive coaching expertise and extensive board service experience. And Samantha is an award-winning communications strategist, entrepreneur, and advisor who has spent her career helping leaders communicate with clarity, build influence, and elevate their impact. Together, they're helping women rethink what's possible for their leadership journeys and creating more pathways into rooms where important decisions are getting made. And as someone who spends a lot of time encouraging women to pursue bigger opportunities, I absolutely love what they're building. Annette, Samantha, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank
Thank
you. So happy to be
you.
here.
The crowd
We're
goes
so
wild.
excited.
I am so thrilled to talk to you because I think so many times women come out of their careers or they transition into different parts of their careers and they're not really sure, you know, the boardroom, getting onto a board is scary territory. So I'm really, really excited to talk to you guys about this and what you've seen over the years as you've built what you're building now. But before we do that, I always ask everyone the same question. Before we dive into all things boardroom, I'd love to start with younger Annette and Samantha. What were each of you like growing up?
Well, it's interesting. I was thinking about this when I saw the question, and I think I was a bit of a juxtaposition. I love bringing people together. I love being surrounded by people. And at the same time, I always felt really intimidated. I don't know if the word is shy, but I wanted people to like me and I wanted to make sure I was doing things right. So in my mind, I was a person who held back. And it's interesting because I'm with some old friends as I spend some time at my parents' house over the summer. And a good friend that I've known since before elementary school said that she always thought of me as outgoing and confident and one of the most social people she knows. And I thought it just goes to show that our perceptions of ourselves can be totally misleading. And when we think about what we've done and how we make people feel and what sticks out, that's how we should consider what we bring to the table, and what we're capable of, not just like these insufficient memories of who we, you know, the scared version of us
Yeah.
thought
What
of.
about you, Samantha? What were you like as a kid?
Yeah. Um, so I would say I was confident as a kid. I was playful. I liked to be friends with everyone. Um, I was the kid who didn't like cliques because I had friends in every single one of them. And I didn't like exclusivity in that way. Um, it's funny too because I was thinking about this question. I was thinking, I, I am really obsessed with the show The Diplomat on Netflix. Um, and I was thinking back, it's really funny. My mom used to call me a diplomat. Like, you're always the diplomat because I would be a lot of the sort of peacekeeping and understanding both sides of an argument or an issue. And I also think, interestingly, I grew up in a divorced household, so I was going back and forth constantly. Every other weekend was back, and I was packing a lot and having to acclimate quickly to different environments. And so I think part of it was that I was very conscious of who I was with. I learned how to communicate, I think, in different environments with different people, but it also was really important to me to find understanding. And I saw how when that was lacking or missing, it was really divisive. So from a really early age, I kind of got those. So again, it was similar to Annette, sort of this playful, confident, like out there. I wanted to be the fastest runner and like really competitive with myself. And then there was this other side of me that also wanted to really make sure that others had whatever they needed to sort of rise to the same occasion. Mm-hmm. So that was, yeah.
It's really interesting, you know, just how those pieces of our childhood like really carry through into adulthood. When you think about a little human being 5, 10, 15 years old, and you think of how much life you haven't learned or lived or whatever, but those pieces of our personality seem to carry through into adulthood, which I think is really so interesting when you really like dissect how we, you know, how majorly things in our lives affect us. But it's so interesting to me, and it rings true with everybody I ask. I mean, really every woman that I talk to, how she describes her younger self, those bits are still in there, and it's really fun to see. I'm really interested in how you found each other. So one thing I'm always fascinated by is partnerships. How did the two of you find each other, and when did you realize that there was something special about this and about your combined skills together?
That's a good question because I'm always curious about that too. And I feel really lucky. Samantha and I actually have known each other for well over 25 years. And we met in college. And when she was that confident, playful girl, and I was still in my shy era, we connected in our first econ class and remained friendly throughout the years we were at school and didn't keep in touch too much after we graduated. We both started doing a lot of coaching work and consulting for our alumni association for Emory University, and saw each other, saw the profiles that were being posted about each of us, and decided that we should have a call to reconnect. And once we got on that call, it was obvious within about 20 minutes that we shared a lot of passion for leadership development, specifically around how we could help women rise to the occasion of more leadership, greater impact, and more confidence. And so within that first call, we decided we should work together. And the concept of Light Her Way, Board of AdvisHERs, and what has become Light the Way was born.
Awesome. Samantha, when you guys hopped on, were you thinking this is going to be amazing, or were you like, I don't know, I don't know?
Such an interesting question. I was so excited to reconnect with Annette. I will say I had followed sort of loosely on LinkedIn, you know, people from college, or I got my MBA at Georgetown, and so, you know, I'm always interested what people coming out of the academic world, what they're into. But as Annette said, we hadn't really, I think we had sent maybe like a couple of LinkedIn messages, but I was so interested in the work that she was doing. I was really, her background and then the shift into executive coaching, and I was seeing some of the posts she was doing, and then the work with Emory. So it was a really exciting conversation. I did not know that anything was going to come out of it other than a reconnection. I mean, it was really just like, we haven't talked in 20 something years. Let's just
So
see
fun.
how you
and also
are.
just
What
so
are you
fun.
doing? There was no agenda in that call, the agenda sort of uncovered itself as we moved forward and learned more about each other and were asking questions. And wow, I've done a lot with leadership development communities too. And wow, I also want to do a group training. And so it was, as Annette said, it was really evident early on in literally one phone call. It didn't have a name, but there was a commitment there.
There was just magic. There was magic there.
It's true. It's true, because we have had so much great integration of the skills that we each bring to the table. And the things that I like doing are not the things that Samantha likes doing, and vice versa. So we've really complemented each other. And it has felt really magical, because there are some partnerships where you can be best of friends and you're not going to work so well together. And things have fallen into place really nicely.
Yeah.
Awesome. One of the reasons I was excited to have you both on is because I think so many women hear the phrase board seat and immediately think that's for someone else. So I'll direct this to you, Annette. Why do you think board seats matter, and why should more women be considering them? And for both of you, what's something you've learned from the women in your Board of AdvisHERs cohorts that's surprised you? So start with you, Annette. Why do you think board seats matter, and why should more women be considering them?
Yeah, that's a great question, because you're right that a lot of women just put the idea to the side and don't think that it's for them. But I'll say that even for those of us, or those people who don't know what a board does, or who think they know nothing about what happens in the boardroom, almost everyone's seen those shows that have the board, helping to run the company or making these big decisions. And when you think about that, you need to think those are the people who are running the show. And if I could quote Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, women belong in the places where decisions are being made. And aside from that, the fact is that diversity, and especially gender diversity, meaning women in the boardroom, have been proven to drive better financial results, better social impact, improved collaboration, productivity in the boardroom and in the executive suite. So it's incredibly important for women in the boardroom to be there for the company, but also each individual woman who joins a board has an opportunity to grow her network. She is controlling the narrative around her expertise, and she is building skills. She's building real experience at a new and higher level. And she's gaining visibility with people who she would not experience or run across in her operational role or in her community. So it's so important and valuable for women to be in the boardroom. And there are so many different kinds of boards to consider.
And anything that's surprised you, Samantha, anything that stands out that surprised you from some of these cohorts you've done or things you've learned from women in your Board of AdvisHERs?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. Annette touched on some of them. I think some of the conversations that most surprise me are not understanding the alignment between someone's expertise and how they can add value in the boardroom. And part of that is just lack of access, lack of real understanding and conversations between board members and those who could potentially fill some of those seats at some point. So even though they've got this technical background, or let's say someone comes from the communications industry, not understanding that those skills are vitally important in the boardroom and how to map those. I think that's a big piece of why we created Board of AdvisHERs, was to bring in sitting board members and curate and have these kinds of conversations, because even at the highest levels where we may assume, well, maybe you know what happens in the boardroom or whatever, they don't always. And we really do need to say, for everyone, I'm going to come into this with a growth mindset, a curious mind, and be asking the questions that are going to enable me to get to where I want to be. So I think just the assumptions that people come in with are sometimes surprising assumptions, and I'm curious where and how those have developed. Um, yeah.
I think it's just also a lack of knowledge. Like, right. It's
Yes.
not like, I think a lot of women think about, climbing the corporate ladder, and they think about their career, and they think about becoming CEO, or they think about whatever position they're thinking of. They're not necessarily thinking of board seats all the time. They're not necessarily, whereas perhaps maybe men are more accustomed to thinking about that, or more accustomed to being offered opportunities, which also might be one of the reasons why women
Yeah.
aren't necessarily thinking of it. Samantha, you've spent years helping leaders communicate, advocate for themselves, and build visibility. And I think that's another reason why it's tough for women. But what do you think stops many incredibly qualified women from even considering board service? And do you think it's a qualification problem, a confidence problem, or something else?
I will say I don't think it's a qualification problem. There are so many experts in their field, very, very qualified women. Going back to what we just said, I think there's a knowledge gap. I think there is a structural and systemic gap of access. And we know from the research that's been out there about women in the boardroom, which Annette pointed to, number one, all of this sort of laundry list of improved outcomes. But also interestingly, that when a woman joins a board, the likelihood of more women joining that board goes up. And that's why it's not just important for women to join boards, but it is to see representation, and then also sponsorship. So who's sponsoring? Who is actually making these different connections? So I will say it is not qualification. Confidence is an issue. I think some of the lack of confidence is just in not knowing what the path is ahead of them. We hear it all the time. I don't know. I don't even know where I would start. I don't even know, even if I have a conversation with a sitting board member, how does that really lead to a board seat? Or what if there's nothing available at the time on that board? So I think it's really about arming yourself with the information, the know-how of how your relationship should be leveraged in a really strategic, intentional way for board service. All of that, all of that contributes to that confidence, right? And so part of it is just, it's getting board ready, and it's getting board positioned. And that's what we say at the end of our particular program, Board of AdvisHERs. It's really not that women are not qualified. They are all qualified. I mean, we work with women who know their value, and they have risen and they have figured out how to go up in the corporate ladder or, nonprofit ladder. But they need help positioning and identifying how to align that expertise in a way that's going to be impactful and understood, so that board members really know how to utilize them and that they need them.
Yeah. Annette, I think many women assume that they need to be a CEO before serving on a board. What do boards actually look for, and what skills do women often underestimate about themselves?
Yeah. I think that is one of the things that holds a lot of women back from pursuing any type of board position. And if we go back to the basics, boards exist to protect shareholder or stakeholder interest or investment. So, what that means is the board is there to oversee the work of the executive team, or to provide strategic direction and guidance, asking the right questions, identifying risks, and looking at opportunities that may be shifting in the marketplace. So a valuable board member doesn't necessarily need to have been a CEO. A valuable board member is focusing on governance, which is how our organization operates, whether or not it has the right structures and policies in place to grow, to sustain itself, both legally and in alignment with the vision of the organization. So, not having been a CEO or within the C suite doesn't mean you're not able to join a board, because there are so many ways that you can get the expertise to drive governance and to make sure that you are being a strategic guide to that company or that nonprofit organization. And especially when a board is trying to fill a gap that they may have because someone left or because the times are changing, you might have expertise in finance, security, technology, policy. And when you can bring that to the table, you add a tremendous amount of value, even if you don't have that overarching C suite experience. Um, that being said, on the corporate side, there are a lot of people or board members who are looking for candidates with C suite experience because it has that cachet and it brings uh, the connection with other high level executives into the organizations. And so these organizations and the boards, they rely on those connections to get more partners, to get more clients, to get more customers. They also assume that someone who has been in the C suite has had a relationship and an oversight of an organization and knows how to spot risk, knows how to be a true leader from from a large general perspective and not just focused in one boots on the ground area. So, in the case where you are looking at a board to join and they do want C suite experience, the thing that we say is don't let that be something that turns you off from pursuing that board seat. Make a roadmap where you can pursue experience that is either has the title that will get you into that role or that has the relatable skills or the transferable skills that are equivalent to a CEO or a CFO type role, and then be able to speak to that in terms of the value you bring to the board. And that's why building a roadmap and understanding your long-term timeline is so important, because a C-suite role might be what you need. And if that's the case, why there's no reason you can't make that happen.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I think a lot of times that is the case. I think a lot of people say, I'm not even going to try it. I wasn't CEO of whatever company. And so I'm not going to I'm not going to go for it. And I think that's a mistake because I think there's a lot of value to a lot of these executive women that have had, like you said, a ton of experience, maybe not as CEO, but perhaps their experience is actually more valuable than just having the title of CEO elsewhere.
Absolutely. And I totally forgot to answer the second part of the question. And so if we speak to the idea of soft skills, and people, especially women, underestimate these as leadership skills. And the term soft is actually misleading because soft skills were created as a word when they were juxtaposed with hard skills, which meant you actually worked with hard things like construction or, building something out of material. And so a soft skill like creative problem solving, listening, building relationships, those are not lesser skills. They're all ridiculously valuable. And in fact, these skills are actually driving better outcomes in addition to the hard skills, quote unquote, like finance or creating PowerPoint presentations or whatever it does. So when people don't believe what they've achieved has earned them a place at the table or the power to use their voice, they hold back. And so I think women especially, underestimate the value of a lot of these skills that come naturally to them. And I have so many stories about this, but I want to be mindful of our listeners' time. But I have women in my life who are complete badasses. They are working internationally, speaking 5 languages, conducting deals around the world and constantly feeling a little bit nervous because maybe they communicate differently than their boss does. And they're letting self-doubt creep in instead of standing up and holding their own power. So when we work with women like this, it's inspiring to actually support them in figuring out how to reframe all of these amazing things that they do naturally or that they've taught themselves to do or that they've learned in their careers, and help them understand what they bring and how it aligns with a job description or a board role, and give them the power and the space and the encouragement to pursue something where they would be incredibly, successful and fulfilled and also impactful.
Okay, next question is for Samantha. You've spent your career helping leaders communicate clearly and build influence. How important is executive presence and communication when pursuing leadership opportunities, board seats, and influence?
That's such a good question. I'm so glad that you asked that because it's critically important. Building your influence is about being able to articulate your value, being able to build understanding that others see and appreciate your value. And it's interesting because I didn't really understand that as a young professional coming into the corporate work. I started in management consulting out of my MBA program, and I was really, really focused on being the best at what I was doing. And I didn't really understand, even at that point, how important it was to build those relationships in the office, to do them in a way that felt good to me, to understand sort of the roadmap of how people advanced and why people, even in assessments, like 360 assessments, understood, how to make others understand how you were contributing effectively. And so I think I would get frustrated a lot saying, well, I built this, whatever it was, communications plan, and now the entire team is using it on all of this other client work because I created it. Yes, but does anybody else know that? And are you saying it in a way that is building your influence and your presence in that environment? And that's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing to understand because when your environment changes, that dynamic can also change, but there's also a lot of anchoring principles that go along with it too. So, that's where executive presence in the context of board service is really about, it's not just like holding a room's attention, but being able to ask questions in insightful ways, draw out the best in others, build trust, build trusted relationships. And so, I always go back to, it's such a pet peeve of mine when communication is described as a soft skill because it is the foundation. It is a business driver. And the more that we talk about these kinds of skills in a way that allows others to see that direct connection, that's how we're also building our executive presence and really leading the conversation. So it is really critical.
Thank you so much for being here. I hope you love this conversation as much as I did. And we're not done yet. This continues in part 2, so make sure you come back and join us there. That's a wrap on today's episode of Carrie, It's Not That Serious. If this conversation resonated, subscribe and share it with a woman in power in your life. You can find more conversations, more community, and all the fun INTS merch you love at itsnotthatserious.com. We're building something meaningful here, and I'm so glad you're a part of it. Until next time, remember, it's not that serious.